Goeienaand. Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And I want you to meet Stephen Kalbrecht, who is a migration lawyer based in Florida in the USA. Stephen, tell us a bit about yourself and your involvement in this area.
Hi, Scott. Thank you. I'd be happy to. I've been a practicing lawyer for over 15 years now. The focus of my professional practice is the practice of U.S. immigration law. And as such, I've been representing foreign nationals from all over the world, living and working in the United States, making the U.S. their home. I live in the greater Tampa Bay area on the western coast of Florida on the Gulf of Mexico. And it is actually a significant presence here of South African expats who call this area home. And I've had the pleasure of knowing many South Africans over the years. And I've come to, appreciate them as a very hardworking, very caring people, very law-abiding. It's always been a pleasure to work with them, and it's heartbreaking to see what's actually happening in South Africa at this moment.
Yeah, it's absolutely shocking what's going on in South Africa right now. And I don't know if you heard that British Member of Parliament, Rees-Mogg, what he said, where he suggested that the concentration camps that the British set up for the women and children during the Boer War didn't have more casualties than the city of Glasgow at that time, which is totally outrageous. I've just put a video up about it. Anyway, let's get back to the subject here. So tell me a bit about your involvement as far as migration. What areas do you specialize in? What sort of, because it's a very technical area, isn't it?
Yes, it is. My specialty generally is the business-based immigration, bringing in professionals from all over the world based on their work experience, their entrepreneurial drive, their credentials, their academics, their education. That's a large portion of my professional practice. But given the situation in South Africa, Laurel Scott and I, put our heads together and said, look, we have to help these people out. We have to get people out of the country in a safe and responsible way. And we're sort of figuring things out as we go. The refugee and political asylum law in the US is under a constant change and a state of mutation. So we're sort of figuring this out as we go. Things that we took for granted, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, things are shifting and changing. The administration is undergoing a lot of pressure to change. There's, talk about building the wall along the southern border.
Yeah.
There's these camps in the US on different sides of the political aisle, the far left, the far right. Everybody is fear-mongering, putting a lot of nonsense out there into the media regarding, refugees and who is a refugee and who is not. And it's making our job significantly more difficult in trying to, differentiate who's coming here for just mere convenience and basically being an economic refugee wanting to benefit from the government from handouts, or whether you have hardworking people who have worked all their lives to build an existence, who are having everything taken away from them and basically being disowned, if you will, of their personal property, whether it be farmland or whether it's a business. And that's the situation now that we're seeing in South Africa and in Zimbabwe. Hardworking people suddenly losing everything they've worked so hard to build over a few generations. And we're trying to do what we can to put a stop to it.
Yeah, that's great. Now, as far as the whites wanting to come over to America, I know of a couple who are looking right now at coming across to America.
Yes.
And, they've got money. What's the process they would have to go through to get a green card and to actually be accepted as permanent residents?
I think the difficulty that many South Africans, and then we can basically take by extension a lot of the Zimbabweans into this equation as well, the difficulty that many will face is the fear of breaking the law or doing things that are in a gray zone that are maybe not 100% by the rules, because I think it goes against our law-abiding nature to do things based on survival instinct to say, hey, what am I willing to do to get out of the country safely?
Yeah.
We have to figure out, our US immigration system doesn't allow them to approach the US consulate directly in South Africa and say, I want political asylum or refugee status. I can't do it from abroad. So our challenge is that we have to get the South Africans to the US border or close to the US border as we can in some other way by using another country as a stopover country. So we have to figure out, how do we get them to, let's say, Mexico or Canada or somewhere on a tourist or visitor visa, and allow this country to allow them temporary entry to continue on their journey to the United States. And then basically land in the United States saying, we're here asking for refugee status, process us in any way you wish, and let us figure out our asylum claim along the way. Obviously, if people have the ability to come to the US legally, using a work visa or some sort of employment-based application for a green card or residency status, that would of course be preferred. That would be the preferred way of doing it, and simply going through the normal process of legal immigration involving the US consulate. But given the current state of the political climate in South Africa, we're also very suspicious that maybe behind closed doors, at some point, the US embassy or the US consulate might slowly start raising their denial rates, just to try to keep the outflow of, let's say, white South Africans to a reasonable amount of people. So I think in essence, we're forcing South Africans' hand by having to find alternate ways to somehow end up in the US along the way, or even alternate destinations, such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Great Britain, wherever they choose. We're going to have to be creative and sort of think outside the box and say, how do we get them out of the country? And what I'm working on right now is we're trying to put together a whole package to give South African families a solution to how do you responsibly go through this entire process from start to finish, from making that very first decision, do we stay or do we go?
Is this for amnesty, or is this through a legal visa?
The legal visa methods haven't changed. This is for the refugee status, for families that decide they want to leave.
Okay, so tell us more about that package. What does it include?
We're going to figure out, essentially from that very first family table discussion on, do we want to stay here and see how things go, or do we want to basically pack up and leave? We want to be able to answer all the questions along the way of, how do we leave? How do we go about it? How do we get some assets out of the country in terms of money or portable assets that they can bring with them? How do they basically prepare for an exodus, not knowing if they will ever be able to come back, or if they have to stay outside of the country, essentially in exile for years until maybe government or politics in South Africa improve, if ever. So we're kind of putting this together as we speak, where we're trying to figure out, what are these million questions that they have in their head when they're thinking about leaving their country that they grew up in. And I'm also currently considering maybe coming over to South Africa and actually hosting a few informational sessions and trying to answer people's most pressing issues and questions that they may have, because this is not something that most ordinary people think about every day.
Right. So when do you think you're coming over to South Africa?
It depends on the level of support and how quickly we can put this together. It would be good to do it maybe sometime in March.
Okay. Right. Well, look, I can certainly put up videos promoting your visit to South Africa. I know there's a huge number of people who are feeling very stuck because they want to get out of the country,
yes,
because they don't have the money, because of age, because of health, because of maybe family, extended family.
yes.
Even the other day, a lady who's got a couple of dogs, and she felt because of the dogs she couldn't leave. So there's all sorts of extenuating circumstances that make it very hard for people to go. Now, you've obviously dealt with South Africans in the past and helped them migrate to the US.
Yes.
Can you give us a couple of examples of what you've been able to do?
Most of these have really been business owners who have been able to maintain their business in South Africa and at the same time establish another business in the United States, or become involved with another business in the United States and essentially transfer themselves from South Africa to the US. Some people have been doing it based on their academic credentials. If these were, learned professionals that have taken their professional skills to US employers or US academic institutions, or teaching at universities. I basically would counsel anyone to take a good look at their resume, take a good look at their CV and say, what do I have to offer? What is something that maybe I can bring to the table for a potential US company or US employer, and figure out what we can, devise for them, if there's a legal path that we can choose, because the legal path will always be preferable to the refugee asylum status.
Yeah. Now, just on those two, or a couple of areas that people have mentioned, there's a tremendous shortage of in America. And one is nurses, especially in the old age homes. And
Yes.
the other one is teachers. Now, what's the situation if let's say I was a nurse and I was wanting to leave South Africa, would I have a chance of getting into the US?
I think so, yes. If they went through the qualification process, there's a NCLEX, it's called NCLEX exam, and essentially any foreign nurse has to take this exam and basically get their credentials evaluated and certified for US healthcare providers. And there are many healthcare providers in the US that have a specific way of bringing in foreign nurses. We do this all the time for nurses from, let's say, Great Britain or Canada. It's a common way to do it, and it's similar for the teachers as well.
Okay. And are there any other professions like that there's a shortage of in America?
Anything with technology, high-tech jobs, anything concerning cybersecurity. There are lists of basically occupations that I could provide, or I could send a link to in your video, where people can actually check and see where they stack up. It's generally faster initially on a non-immigrant visa than it would be on a green card. The green cards are lengthy, but if they can get here somehow on a legal non-immigrant visa that's time limited initially, at least they have their foot in the door.
Okay. And then they can actually apply for a
extend it, they can renew it, eventually they can apply for a residency permit. Many of my South Africans over the years have also had the benefit of dual citizenship. They may have had a South African passport along with a UK passport, or maybe they were South African, but their parents or grandparents were Italian, and they also had Italian citizenship. I would ask anybody who is in South Africa to maybe do a little bit of a genealogical research to find out if they have parents or grandparents of a European nationality, to maybe get an EU passport. That is a very nice and easy way to segue out of South Africa legally.
That's a great idea. Now, do you actually help people go into other countries apart from the US, like, for example?
Yes.
So you can help people anywhere, go anywhere?
Pretty much. I mean, the focus is on the US, but I have contacts in other countries. If somebody approaches me and says, hey, I want to go to the UK, or I want to go to Canada or Australia where you are, we can definitely help them.
Okay, that's great. Now, looking at the legal process, okay, what are the sort of costs that they can expect to pay to do it that way?
The legal way? You mean work visas?
Yes, work visas and, moving towards getting a green card.
Depends on how they do it and how many people are involved. If it's one applicant, or one applicant and a spouse and maybe some children, you're probably looking at costs ranging from anywhere from, let's say, $3,500 to maybe $10,000 over the years, over probably a time frame of maybe 3 years.
Does that include your legal costs?
On some cases, yes. My legal fees are flat fees, and it just depends on the type of application that we submit for them. The legal fees are flat. The government fees are flat. If a person contacts me and says, this is my situation, what can I apply for? I can give them an option or two options and say, these are the options you have and these are the costs associated with them.
Okay, now let's say I'm someone who's wanting to talk to you about migrating to the US.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like a free consultation, or where they can actually have a chat to you and then make a decision on what to do?
Yes, most people contact me by email, or they fill out the contact form on the website. They reach out to me, and then we go back and forth over email. It's usually initially the easiest due to the time changes. And then if at some point we determine, hey, we need to do this by Skype or WhatsApp or telephone, we then usually set up a follow-up phone call.
Right, cool. Now, I guess the big difference between doing it the legal way and doing it by the asylum way, the big difference is that with asylum, it doesn't matter if you're 65 years old or if you've got poor health or if, for example, you've got no skills. So it's a far better way for people in those categories to go. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes and no. There are no limitations per se when you go down the asylum route, but as we're quickly discovering, your chances of succeeding initially in your asylum claim and making it to the US, at least to get in and have your claim heard, I think it's crucial at this point to travel with children.
Right. Okay. So having kids with you is the way to go.
If you're doing the asylum route, if you're doing the refugee status, if you're coming to the border basically asking for basically a humanitarian relief, then having children is an absolute must. If you're thinking about a legal work visa or green card based on your skills or your experience or your ability to run a business, then children are not necessarily a bonus or required. You can definitely do it even if you're almost senior citizen, maybe pre-retirement age.
Right. Okay. So getting back to teachers and nurses and people with skills, you mentioned technology is a big area that
yes.
They're looking for people. Can you go more into what sort of areas of technology?
Anything cybersecurity, anything related to blockchain, cryptocurrencies, alternative energies, anything that is sort of a hot topic right now. Network engineers, people who have expertise in cloud computing, pretty much anybody in the IT business should be able to have enough credentials on paper,
right,
to basically make a good case and say, hey, I have at least a bachelor level or master's degree level education. I have the experience in IT or related branches. I think the outlook is good.
And are there any traps that they've got to watch out for if they're going through the legal process? I mean, things they should not do? I guess having a criminal record is a no-no.
Criminal records are bad. Prior negative immigration history, of course, with the United States is bad. If they have a record of overstaying their visas or violating terms of previous visas, that's a bad thing. And that's basically it. There are generally no health screenings unless you are applying for permanent residency. So if you're just applying for a work visa or something that is time limited, a health screen is usually not it.
Right.
Obviously, they want to make sure that you're not going to become a public charge.
Right. Okay.
You have to have the ability to earn income.
Okay. And what advice would you give to people who are sort of sitting on that, which way do I go? What's the best advice you give to people who are in that position where they're unsure what to do?
The first advice I would do is to do some soul searching to figure out how badly do you want to get out? What is your personal time frame for getting out? Is it, is it a matter of weeks? Is it a matter of months? Do you have the resources to get out? Take a look at yourself and your spouse in terms of your work experience, your educational experience, your financial assets. How much can you bring to the table as a viable candidate to either go the legal way and look for a work visa, or if none of these options seem viable or present themselves, and let's say you have children, is the possible refugee status an alternative.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you sit and conclude that the US is too prohibitive or that you don't fit in any of these categories, maybe look at other countries where it may be a little more easy to get into.
Yeah. Because I believe that Georgia, I've got an associate who's based in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
When I say an associate, it's a lady we send people to who want to move to that part of the world. And she mentioned that not only do you not have to have a visa if you're coming from South Africa, you can just fly in, but you can go straight to, I think it's Home Affairs or something like that, and you can get a 360-day visa to stay there, or whatever it's called to stay there. And if you get a job there during that period and you're settled in, you can then apply quite easily for permanent residency. Are you familiar with that situation?
I've heard of it. I think there are a number of countries that if we looked at those closely, we may find other alternative destinations that, you know, South Africans may want to consider.
Yeah.
Sometimes the United States may not be the best fit.
Yeah. But
especially if you have other family members in other countries. I have a South African family right now where there's a relative living in Denmark. So we're looking at the moment of maybe having them go to Denmark.
Yeah. Okay. So they could, for example, approach you by email and say, hey, look, I know you're in the US.
Yes.
I'm interested in going to Denmark, or I'm interested in going to this place. And you can
yes.
then give them advice and take it from there.
Yes. And I think if there was one thing that I would ask families to also consider is to at least try to get their hard-earned savings, their money, some of their tangible assets, get them out of the country somehow, open up a foreign bank account, maybe with the help of some friends, you know, get some of the money out of South Africa, but who knows what's coming next.
Yeah. What about Bitcoin?
Absolutely. I'm a friend of it. I think that would be a good idea if some people could transform some of their money from Rand or other fiat currencies into Bitcoin and transfer it out of the country. At least they can access that Bitcoin from somewhere else, wherever they may land at some point, whether they land in Europe or in North America or wherever they go, or Australia. At least they can take the Bitcoin with them.
Yeah, yeah, because that's certainly something a lot of people are talking about now.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Now, what I'm going to do after I post up this video is I'm going to attach a couple of links which are related to your service, and also your email address so people can contact you directly.
Okay.
And is there anything else you'd like to cover while we're just here on Open Chat?
I'm happy to be a resource to anybody who reaches out to me. No email goes unanswered. I'll answer anybody who contacts me. If there's anything I can do, if somebody in South Africa can help arrange the tour to South Africa to maybe speak in, you know, maybe 3 or 4 cities and give a presentation, help people figure out how to connect the dots. And
okay.
You know, I know this is a very emotional topic. This is a very hard thing for families to sit down at the dinner table to discuss. Nobody wants to leave their homeland behind. But I think that if things continue down this path, that it's just a question of time. And if people do have the luxury of packing a bag and leaving, if we can help in any way, then we should do so.
Well, look, I think the work that you and Laurel are doing is fantastic. I should mention to people who are watching this that you work closely with Laurel, who's the other lady who we've been talking to from the US. And tell us a bit about your association with Laurel.
We've been friends over the years. You know, we've met at some AILA conferences years ago. She's an expert in waivers, in waivers of inadmissibility. I do the business side of the immigration, work visas, and our practices kind of complement each other well. And, you know, initially, we both had this idea to help South Africans.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that we both had the same idea. And she had it, and then I had it. And all of a sudden, you know, through this family that came through Mexico and Texas, we reconnected and said, hey, wait a minute, you know, let's put our heads together. Let's complement each other and see what we can bring to you guys and do whatever we can from our end as limited as it may be, but we want to do anything we can to help you out.
No.
And we really appreciate your blog, and I've seen many of your videos by now, and I think you're doing the right thing.
Thank you. Now, you talked earlier about a package you're putting together. Is that going to be something you can email to someone, or is it something that you post to someone?
I'm trying to put it together now, filling in the blanks, and then sort of working down like an outline of what are the types of things that people would need to put in place in order to leave. And I want to put together as many people that can help families in this situation, basically making all these difficult decisions. Yes, that will be something that they can ultimately download from us or get from us, and that will obviously be a major component should I come over there in March to present on. Is this, because I know people must be sitting in these rooms looking at us with 10,000 questions in their heads saying,
Sure.
how do you want us to go about this? We can't just put everything in a backpack and leave. And we want to give people hope, and we want to give people some tangible answers that are useful answers, and some action steps along the way, and maybe connect them with the right people to say, hey, take your money, open up an account, put it in Bitcoin, and here's how you do it. I'm sure there are a lot of people that have heard about this but have no clue how to do it.
Right.
And we're just trying to figure out how can we use our legal minds to basically fill in the blanks.
Yeah, perfect. Now, have you had contact with Peter?
Yes, by email. We've emailed back and forth, and we've had some email contacts, and we're about to set up a Skype call in the next few days.
Fantastic, because Peter's got some tremendous contacts in the US who could offer sponsorship and help out South Africans seeking asylum.
Very good.
Yeah. All righty. Thank you so much for your time, Steve.
Anytime.
If you can just email me those links, just in
I will do that.
And I'll get this video up today. And look, getting back to your visit that you want to undertake later this year, can you just, before we go, can you just talk a bit about that? Which cities you're looking at going to?
Probably, just kind of doing almost like an informal tour, maybe starting in Cape Town and working myself along the coast,
Right.
Port Elizabeth, maybe Durban, hit some of the major cities. Depending on who you ask, some people say go to Joburg, other people say don't you dare go to Joburg. So I don't know if Johannesburg should be on the list or not.
Go to
Maybe. So it just depends on logistics.
Sandton would be better. That's got it's a safer place to visit. All right.
But yeah, I would be, happy to come over and do sort of an informational Q&A session with people that are interested. If the interest is there, if somebody can organize it and say, look, people really, really want to hear this. They want to be part of this. They want to learn about it. I would be happy to make the effort.
Cool. All righty. Well, look, I'll just put the message out there, and people can get in touch with you and see how you go with that.
Sounds good.
All righty. Thank you so much for being on.
No problem. Yeah, I'll be happy to come on anytime you want.
Fantastic. And say hi to Laurel for me.
I will.
Okay. Take care.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Yep. Bye-bye.